You didn't realize what a magical time we were in. I heard that line at the very end of the trailer for Nothing But a Good Time. The guy that was saying it wasn't on camera, but I knew who it was because it was me. Nothing But a Good Time is a 3-part docuseries that premieres September 17th on Paramount Plus. I've not seen the show, so I can't review it. The actual title of the program is Nothing But a Good Time, the uncensored story of 80s hair metal. This 3-part series has Jeff Tremaine as the executive producer. Jeff pretty much gave us Jackass and all of the Jackass movies. Jeff also directed The Dirt, the Motley Crue biopic. Jeff Tremaine is going to be joining us today on the Cathouse Hollywood podcast. And in case you didn't know, I despise the word hair metal. Not the genre itself, just the word. And I'll explain that a little bit later in the show. And I'm going to tell you the bands of that genre, where they really got their influences from. Did I tell you that I hate the word hair metal? Oh, I did already. That doesn't mean that I didn't partake in a lot of Aquanite. You know I did. Actually, I can smell it right now. It smells like it's mixed with cigarette smoke and Jack Daniels. Oh, I know why. Because this is episode 8 of the Cathouse Hollywood podcast. Coming to you from the Cathouse South Studios in Race City, USA. This is episode 8 of the Cathouse Hollywood podcast. And I am Riki Rachtman. How are you doing? Well, I assumed you said, I'm doing just great, Riki. Well, I hope you are. You know, September 23rd is a big day, brothers and sisters. And that's because September 23rd, 38 years ago, Tammy and I opened the world-famous Cathouse. 38 years ago. It's a pretty big deal to me. And on September 23rd this year, I'm opening up the doors to, no, not the Cathouse. Well, sort of. I'm going to be opening the doors to my brand new Patreon. It's patreon.com/Riki Rachtman. If you still don't know how to spell my name, just look. It's probably on this podcast. There are a bunch of levels on this Patreon. Hell, you could even join it for free. And for only $2.22 a month, you are supporting this Cathouse Hollywood podcast. You'll get every episode before anybody else gets it. And you're also going to get episodes that nobody else can get. Plus, you're going to get the Triple R podcast, which only the Patreon members will get. Other tiers include videos that you've probably not seen from Headbangers Ball, some of the greatest interviews from Headbangers Ball. I've even got video that I found from Cathouse, and exclusive footage of Riki's ride. And I have the entire series of a show that I did called The Ball about 4 or 5 years ago, which was my version of the Headbangers Ball. And it aired on an app, so most people never saw it, but I'm going to share it with you. Anyways, the Patreon is patreon.com/Riki Rachtman. And there's a couple tiers where you can get stuff like a sweater like I wore on stage, but it's going to be the felt patches are going to have your city on it. And you know how you guys love all those mugs. There's a couple of my Riki's Ride mugs on eBay right now going for over $1,000. That's not me. I think it's stupid, but we're going to be making some mugs exclusively for certain Patreon members. So there's just more and more stuff coming up. You'll find out about that September 23rd, but you can actually join right now. That's patreon.com/Riki Rachtman. If you are here listening to the show, you either were a part of the 80s rock scene or you're a fan of the scene. Maybe you're just younger and you're a little intrigued about what it was really like. That's okay. I'm glad you're here no matter what demographics you fit in. In 1986, my roommate and I, Tammy Down, who had just started a band called Faster Pussycat, opened a rock and roll dance club called Cathouse. Yes, we did have some bands play at the Cathouse. I'll name 12 right now if I can. Guns N' Roses, Faster Pussycat, Motorhead, Alice Cooper, Alice in Chains, Exodus, Megadeth, Black Crowes, Pearl Jam, Danzig, Suicidal Tendencies, 11, Primus. Okay, that's just 12 of them. If I spent more time, I know I could think of a lot more. The Cathouse was pretty much at the epicenter of the 1980s Hollywood rock scene, but we were very different than the Whiskey, Roxy, Troubadour. You see, we weren't really a live venue. We were a scene, and most of the times, no bands played, and we were just a rock and roll dance club, and we were still sold out. We owned sex, drugs, rock and roll. And as an outsider, you might think that it was just sleaze and debauchery. And you know what? It really was. But what isn't really captured, what most people don't know, is how much we were all hustlers. We all worked our asses off. And it wasn't nothing but a good time all the time. A matter of fact, our scene hit some lows. But for those that really, really stuck through it, the payoff was colossal. The book, Nothin But a Good Time, was released over 2 years ago. It was written by, I know I'm going to screw up his name, Tom Bugeaud and Richard Beanstalk. I know it's not Beanstalk, but it's spelled sort of like Beanstalk. That book I'm in, and it might have been one of the last interviews that I did for an author trying to describe the 80s rock scene. You see, I get bored talking to people that may have been writing a book about the 80s one day and then the rise and fall of Madonna the next. I did do an interview in the book and found that I was asked some pretty good questions. And when the book came out, Nothin But a Good Time, I was pleasantly surprised. I think it's a really good book. Jeff Tremaine co-created Jackass. He's a pretty good dude, and I'm very curious what he's going to do with his docuseries based on the book. Why don't we ask him? Jeff Tremaine is joining us right now on the Cathouse Hollywood podcast. And Jeff, the last time I saw you, you were in my house asking me questions for this movie, and now it's actually being released September 17th on Paramount Plus. We're still a few days from the release of the docuseries. Are you a little bit nervous to see how people react to it?
No, not too bad. You know, it's my first music doc, so we'll see. But I'm pretty happy with it. I think it came out great. So.
Now, I read the book when the book came out. Now, when the book came out, which was written, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Tom Bugeaud and Richard Beanstalk or something like that. I'm saying their names wrong, right?
Beanstalk and Bugeaud, yeah.
I wasn't that far off. When that book came out, I bought the book. And out of all the books that were written about that scene, I was very pleasantly surprised. I really liked the book. And then I had heard for a long time that they were going to make a movie out of it. And then your people called me and said, hey, can we come down to your house and interview for Nothin But a Good Time? And they told me that you were going to be you executive producer on it, which I was excited because I had never met you. And you came in my house with like 12 people and vans and everything, and we shot it. And I'm really curious about how it's going to turn out. And I don't want to say that I'm pessimistic because I like you and I like the stuff you've done. But there's a lot of people, and I think you realize this, there's a lot of people that have taken this scene very, very seriously.
Yeah, for sure. I try to treat it with total respect. There are a lot of voices, so, we try to, find the best stories and let those ones breathe a little bit, but you're in it quite a bit.
Oh, good. I'm not going to lie, I like that.
So, I don't know. I think it came out great. I was really happy with it.
You grew up in Los Angeles, but you weren't really part of the 80s rock scene, correct?
Yeah, well, I moved to LA in '89, so I kind of wasn't there for a lot of it, right? I was in college in St. Louis before that, and then in the DC scene before that.
Do you remember the first time you saw bands at the Sunset Strip, or did you not see that scene, so you're just kind of having fun researching it for the movie?
Well, I didn't I didn't really participate in the strip metal scene that much, right? I would get jammed up on Sunset and see the crowds and everything, right? In '89, it was crazy. I would mostly avoid it just because it was so crazy. But as time went on, I started, as nostalgia happens and everything, I've gotten more and more into it. And then doing the dirt, that really got me involved with Motley Crue and So no, I wasn't really involved in the scene, I would say. I'm a big music nerd, but
digging deep and diving into the scene, were there any preconceptions that you had about people from that scene? Because the interesting thing is that you're talking to all these people that were such key figures of the scene, but also talking to them like, 3 or 4 decades later. So everybody's got a pretty much different take. What was your scene before you got involved in this? What was your preconception of the 80s Hollywood rock scene?
I mean, I think I kind of understood it, right? I was more like into punk rock and stuff, but it was similar scene, right? So I got it. I didn't judge it. I was fine with it, Like I liked Guns N' Roses, and I like Motley Crue. I wasn't judgmental of it at all. Like I think I pretty well understood what was going on. But then, as time went on, it was really cool to just talk to all the behind the scenes people like you and like, Tom Werman, who produced all the Motley Crue records and some Poison and Kicks. It was awesome to just get a pretty broad picture of the whole scene. So that's what we try to present. It's not just the musicians, it's to everybody.
Which the show, I mean, that time was not just musicians. It was about all the integral parts of it. It was about the people that went out and people hanging out. I mean, it was an incredible time, and I'm sure you're going to try to capture that in the show.
Yeah, unfortunately, not everyone had phones back then, so there wasn't as much footage as we would have liked, especially of all the naughty stuff. But the one thing I did love about the book is I thought the book did a good job of giving you a pretty well-rounded picture from all levels of people involved in the scene. And that's what I tried to reflect that too in making the thing.
I would say any of the books that tried to capture that scene, that book definitely did the best job. I'd say without a doubt. So when you got this project and you agreed to do it, who were some of the people that were first on your list that you knew you had to talk to?
And I started with trying to get, the biggest musicians we could, and then spread out from there. But I don't know. We got a lot of the people we wanted to. So I don't know.
Who are the people you have in it? I know that, you got me in it. I'm pretty sure you got Bret Michaels in it. And who else?
We got Stephen Pearcy. We got Dawkins. We've got, it's cool. We got Stephen Riley, who just passed, and we got Jack Russell, who just passed. I'm really kind of psyched we got them in a vibrant state telling their stories, because they had great stories and they were great personalities. So I'm glad that this thing is going to come out and kind of show some respect to them. Who else? Like, I don't know, Mike Tramp. We got Doc McGee was awesome.
Do these guys do these people, like obviously Doc and you mentioned Tom Werman, these are people that I know have got, I know I've got great stories. I know some of the other bands have got great stories, but people like Doc and Tom must have some like incredible stories. Did you find them censoring themselves, or did they just tell you stuff that like your jaw dropped, like, holy shit, how are these people still alive?
I would say Doc is very uncensored. He doesn't give a shit. And Tom tried to show respect. He didn't tell all the dirty stuff that happened, but he told good stories, He kept it a little more on the track. Like, Doc was great. Doc just let it rip.
And you also got correct me if I'm wrong, you've got Alan Niven in it.
Alan Niven, yeah. He was great.
Alan Niven was, obviously, Guns N' Roses were playing at the Cathouse before. They were the first band to ever play the Cathouse and the only band that they were playing there before they had a record deal. But Alan Niven was their manager, and I had to deal with Alan Niven all the time. And he was a very honest, what you would picture the English kind of rock and roll manager, but tells the truth exactly like it was. Like, that is what I think I'm probably looking forward to the most, is hearing him tell some of his stories.
Yeah, because he was also a Great White's manager, right? So he went through it back and then Guns N' Roses. And so, yeah, he was very honest, and he doesn't sugarcoat anything. But he's a great storyteller, as you probably know. So, and also Tom Zutaut, who was right there from the beginning of the scene, kind of as a kid, discovered Motley Crue, and then also helped Dawkins get a deal.
And Guns N' Roses.
And Guns, yeah. So he's a key person, right? We got him. He sat down for a good long time.
Do you know what he's doing now?
He's working, selling Kias, or?
Yes. He's selling Kias. I mean, I can't say anything because after Headbangers Ball, I had a couple mistakes that after I got out of jail for a day, I ended up being a car salesman. So I'm not going to say anything about Tom Zut. I'm just surprised that Tom Zutaut is selling Kias. But I talked to him, and he said he's happier now than he was back then because it's less stress.
Yeah, I got to know him doing the dirt, and he's just such a sweet, great guy. Like, I don't know, he's just a very honest, and I really like him.
When people try to describe that scene, you know, they use the cliche sex, drugs, rock and roll. And I'm just guessing that Nothin But a Good Time sort of shows that it actually was sex, drugs, rock and roll.
It was definitely sex, drugs, rock and roll. But it was also a lot of really driven young people who were really working hard, you know? And that's something that you really get, like, when you talk to these people, like, they were doers, right? They were just fucking get out and not just play the music, but promote it and just live. It was 24/7. And I thought, I really respect that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to seeing in the show is that, like, people don't realize that without the internet and with all that, that the people that were working in these bands like a Poison or Guns N' Roses or anybody for that matter, you had to be a hustler. You weren't just going to, you know, get because you had followers or stuff or streams. There was no such thing. So you had to be out there passing out flyers, doing that part. And that's one of the things that I'm excited to see because it really shows that, I believe, in your show, the hustling that everybody had to do.
It was very DIY. You know, you had to create your own costume and gimmick and whole, like, figure out how to cut through all the noise, right? There was a lot of bands trying to cash in on the scene. Once the strip scene got discovered, it was a breeding ground for a lot of interesting bands and a lot of bands that just kind of just went with it and filled it up. So I don't know, we kind of show all of it.
Who were some of the people that were the most fun to work with during this program, the show?
Yeah, I got to talk to Penelope Spheris. That was really cool. Like, I've always liked, you know, the big Decline 1 fan, and then when Decline 2 came out, I was just so blown away by that movie. And just that punk, like, you know, Hollywood never got, like, punk rock right. It was always just, you know, like green hairspray and you're on a mohawk. And she did a movie called Suburbia that was just so good and raw. You know, like, I came from the world of skateboarding and I love punk rock, and Hollywood always just got it wrong. You know, they always just made it such a cliche, and they never didn't even get the cliche right, I don't think. But so I got to talk to her. She was great. I don't know. I love talking to Doc McGee. He's just got so many stories. He's so funny. He's like almost like a mafioso guy. Right? I loved him. Getting to talk to, you know, Mike Tramp was super sweet. Like, didn't even know White Lion personally. Like, I never really, and just he was so cool and honest.
Not to use the cliche, giving us the dirt, but who are the people that were like not so great to work with, or do you not want to say that?
It's really, I think everyone kind of got to tell their stories, and, you know, certain people were definitely more open to. But it's a little tricky, right? Like, you don't know where it fits in history. It's with all the people getting called out and canceled, and, like, it was definitely a different time in the 80s, right? You were there. It's a little scary to put yourself out there and relive some of this stuff that isn't quite as acceptable today as it was back then. There's definitely people that are not sticking their neck out as far as others, but I don't know. I just feel like it's a scene that deserves some love, right? Like, it was fucking awesome. It was a huge scene that lasted more than 10 years of just solid, like, own the whole music space. That's longer than any other scene I can think of.
Yeah, it really was. You know, I think I even say that exactly in the show. I say, like, it really was a magical time. But the problem is that when you're living it, you don't realize that you're in the middle of something that's magical. You don't realize that, like, holy crap, me hanging out with these bands and going to rock and roll Denny's and, you know, walking through the gutters, and so, like, we don't realize it, with all the sex and the drugs, we didn't realize this is just what we did. Like, we didn't think it would be so incredible and magical. Things change so much that it's something that will never be repeated.
Well, also, like, having done Jackass, right, and growing up with those guys, and how bad behavior is sort of celebrated by the masses, right? And like, you sort of, your standards sort of move around, right? Like, what you would do 4 years ago, now we're so outrageous, it doesn't even, you know, like, it escalates, and I would say it almost devolves more than evolves, right, into a crazy place where your reality gets so crazy, like, when you're in a world like that. Very similar to, you know, rolling with a band, right?
Right. But do you think, straying from the subject, and you're talking about everything getting crazier and people willing to do more for that couple minutes of fame, if you think about it, wouldn't you say you're kind of responsible for starting that?
Well, you know, there's one side of it, yeah. But, like, I'm just saying, even, like, just living a depraved life, or whatever you want to call it. Like, it doesn't start at the most extreme. It just gets more extreme, and that becomes normal. And then it gets more extreme, and that becomes normal. And eventually you're living like a fucking wild animal, right?
With Jackass, I felt that it gave kids the freedom to be bad and rebellious and do stuff and kind of get famous without having to go to acting school or stuff like this. I mean, I remember that time because I was dating a woman that had a son, and they couldn't wait till they could find shopping carts to do something crazy in shopping carts. And kids would play like Jackass by just doing crazy, crazy things. And there was some great, phenomenal, hilarious things and some mistakes that happened that probably would have happened without Jackass. But did you ever find that people would blame you? Like, kids were breaking their arms on bicycles and skateboards, since there were bicycles and skateboards. Yeah. But would they ever say, like, well, because of Jackass, these kids are doing these things?
Yeah, we got blamed. Like, a kid lit himself on fire in Connecticut, and Senator Joe Lieberman got on a high horse, like, Jackass is bad for kids, and then MTV got a little nervous. This is kind of what we quit doing the TV show, because all of a sudden, when MTV got nervous, they put an OSHA representative on the show that would follow us around and, like, say, you can do this, you can't do that, like, you know. And it's just stopped being fun, and so we basically quit the TV show, and then the opportunity to make a movie came up where we could be more outrageous because it was going to be R-rated, so we kind of take some of the little kids away. And so that just is how we evolved. But for sure, yeah, Jackass got blamed, especially back in the early days. Any kind of bad behavior.
Of course, I'm going to go back to Nothin But a Good Time, but we're talking a little bit about Jackass. It was very surprising to you, the success of it, and then with the success, all of a sudden you're getting budgets to come up with some of the most crazy things you could ever imagine, right?
Yes. I mean, like, I was shocked that it was ever a success. It just felt like we were out filming with our friends. You know, it kind of grew out of a skateboard magazine that I was doing. We started making videos, and doing the TV show just felt like that. We're just rolling with our friends. We don't know what we're doing. And then it would air one night, and I'd see my friend's ass running down the street. I'm like, holy shit, this is on TV. And then when it came time to do the first movie, I remember Paramount was run by this woman named Sherry Lansing. She was the head of Paramount. And she pulled me aside early on and just said, just make sure it's crazier than anything you did on TV. I'm like, hold my beer, Sherry. We will do that. So I wouldn't say we had the biggest budget to do it all, but we had enough money to do whatever we wanted to at that time. So,
were there ideas that you came up with that, in hindsight, yeah, that wasn't a good idea?
Well, sure.
I mean, nothing serious. I don't want to hear some serious thing about, oh, some kid got hurt or something like that. Like something like, you know, like, oh, why did we do this?
Oh, most of the ideas are, looking back, holy shit, that was a dumb idea. But I don't know. It's just, you know, it is what it is.
We'll go back to Nothing But a Good Time again, which is the uncensored story of hair metal in the 80s. And I don't know how other people feel about this, but I have always had a problem with the word hair metal.
I know. And I knew that a lot of people do it, but a lot of people still, like when I interviewed everybody, I would hear them call it that. Right. And I think because that's what people know it as. That's why we put it in the title. Not because I think it belongs in that category, but that's what tells you exactly what it is. And that it's an unfortunate name, I think, for the scene, right? But it is what my wife would know it as, who wasn't into that, or my, whoever, they know what we're talking about. And so I don't know. Yeah, I hear you. Like, it does not give the scene the credit that it deserves. It's not a cool name for sure, but it is what it's known as. Right.
You're absolutely right. I mean, even though I don't like the word, when there's certain bands, I just did an event that had some guys from Winger and and Eric Bittingham from Cinderella and Reb Beach and Kip Winger. And even though I don't like the word hair metal, I tend to say, oh yeah, it was some guys from a bunch of hair metal bands. And I'm like, oh, why am I saying hair metal? Because when I just see metal, I mean, I think of metal as something quite different than the genre that has been described as hair metal.
Every level too, right? There's we have Motley Crue and Wasp and Guns N' Roses, who these are all bands that grew up and were really, to put them in that category, it's hard, but it's more about an era than even the type of music. Because, Wasp is way more metal.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing that I'm looking forward to, and again, we're recording this before I have seen the show. And there are shows that, some of the 80s Hair Dreams, I think there was something else that was on Paramount that I watched like 5 minutes of it, and I just didn't feel like that I wanted to watch it. No offense to anybody that was in it. But with this, I'm really looking forward to it because I know, Jeff, that it's not just the music. It really was a scene, and I believe that you guys show the very good and sometimes the bad, correct?
I think so. I mean, I try to be as fair as I could. I got the best stories I could from everybody, and you're cutting it, and definitely a lot of great stories ended up on the cutting room floor, but it's hard to fit everything into. We got a deal to make 3 episodes, and so it's 3 45-minute long episodes. So it's like the beginning, the scene, the middle of the scene, and the end of the scene.
So is that the way it goes in the order? It's sort of chronological?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's what I'd say. It's the first episode kind of captures the Sunset Strip in 1981, or even a little before 81, right? And then gets you all the way through Great White. It gets you through Great White and Motley getting on the doing arenas, and then episode 2 kind of comes in with the scene, Poison and Guns N' Roses is really, I would say, episode 2 is when it's kind of at its peak. Episode 3 is sort of the end of the scene, and then sort of the today's version of it, how it's gotten super popular again.
Does it seem like some of the guys, and I don't want to give any stuff away, did it seem like some of the guys that were interviewed in this are a little bitter now, or do they all look back and this was the greatest time ever?
No, I wouldn't say. I don't think I interviewed anyone that came off as truly bitter. I think different people have been through different experiences and have come out the other side. A lot of the guys have been through it all and kind of come out the other side, and they're finally starting to feel like this time was celebrated, right? You're seeing how big Motley's tour is, Guns N' Roses tour is. Poison, everybody's doing really well right now. So I'm sure it feels pretty good to have survived it and then see it finally, being celebrated. It's pretty cool, I think, for everybody who made it out. A lot of addiction, a lot of bad stuff happened in you've been through a whole life.
I think one of the things that's hard for some of us of that scene is coming to the fact that we are all nostalgia. It's just really weird when somebody says look, yeah, that scene, that our scene, but it's now thought of as nostalgia. And now there's new kids that are getting into this nostalgia. Back when, I came into the scene in 79, 80 more in the punk rock scene. I worked at a skateboard park. I was going to punk rock shows, and then it went into the Guns N' Roses and the Motleys and stuff like that. but it was something that was totally different. But we had our cliques, we had our, we'd all go to Okie Dog afterwards, or we would do all these things. And in the rock scene, it was the same thing. We'd go, shopping at Rock and Roll Ralph's and go to dinner, and it was so much more than just the music.
Yeah, it's the whole life for everybody, right?
I'm really excited. So September 17th is episode 1. And then will they air or do they? I don't know how they do it with streaming.
To be honest, I don't know if it all comes out at once or if it's parsed out over weekly. I don't know. I should find out. So definitely episode 1. It might be all 3 though. I don't know.
I think it's going to do great because I know the book. And I know you, and I know you guys are going to treat it seriously and with respect, even though a lot of what we did, and I don't say the scene, I said what we did was very, very goofy at times, but it was also very serious. There's some incredible music, some incredible people. And like you said, we were all hustlers back then. And that's what I'm looking forward to coming out of Nothin But a Good Time, which will be out September 17th. And you might get the other 2 episodes that same day, or you might not, but we're just going to have to. I like it when you'd watch an episode and then you had to wait a week for the next show. Like, that was me.
I liked it. Because it definitely created a buzz, right? It was this whole, what do they call it? They call those water cooler moments, right?
Right.
But as I get older and get used to streaming, the idea of streaming is you get to just power through a whole season of stuff in one night, right? So I don't know. I can say I like waiting, but I don't. Right,
right, of course.
But I think it's effective, right? So they're starting to get back to that on certain things.
After completing it, would you agree that this was a time that will never, ever, ever be duplicated?
It's hard to picture it being happening again for so many reasons, but I would like for there to be a scene as vibrant and, I don't want to get political, but when Trump got elected in 2016, I was like, God, you know what though? The music scene's going to go fucking crazy. There's going to be this new version. Because when I was a kid, it was punk rock was like, fuck Ronald Reagan, right?
I was going to say, how many songs had Reagan in it, Yeah,
and Trump is so much more extreme than that. So I was just waiting for the fucking flood of what's the next punk rock, what is the next metal, whatever, reactionary thing that just gets under your skin and makes you make something. And then I just feel like if it happened without me even knowing about it. So I was a little bummed about that. I was like, God, that's going to be the one positive thing.
I think what it might be is that people are a little bit scared about losing a bit. Well, no, they wouldn't, because there's people on the right that don't mind putting out songs that obviously the left aren't going to like. But mostly that happens in country, I think, more than metal.
Yeah, I just there doesn't seem to be such a vibrant rock scene or a like it was for sure. It's not like it was. I think people just now have social media and they don't fester in their anger. They just get it out right as it comes in. And I don't know. I haven't analyzed as to why it didn't happen. Or maybe it did happen and it just didn't happen the way I wanted it to or expected it to. So who knows? But
I think a lot of it has to do with people don't go out anymore. The way the bands made money is by playing shows all the time. And now it takes everything to get people to go out. And I don't know if it's because a lot of us fans are older, but I don't think the kids are going out like they used to. I don't think, when there's not a local band scene like the bands that are all big now, whether it's the Falling in Reverse or everything else. I don't know if they started by playing the small clubs first. I know a lot of the hardcore bands did, but I don't know with some of these big arena rock bands if they started doing the club scene first. And that's what we had to do.
Like I said, I wish there was a vibrant scene that I could just tap in and go watch a little bit and get out, but fuck.
Do you go out to see live bands anymore?
I try to, and I try to take my kids and get my kids to see it. I don't go as often as I'd like to.
What was the last show you went to?
I took the kids to see the Black Keys and Guns N' Roses at the Hollywood Bowl. That was pretty cool.
Was there any band that did something in an interview that somebody reached out to you and said, hey, we'd like you to take that part out?
No, there was a few things that certain people wanted to not talk, like Doc McGee. I think he's planning a big Moscow Peace Festival documentary, so he didn't want to talk about that.
I am really looking forward to this. Again, September 17th is when either the first episode starts or all the three. We don't know. It's going to be on Paramount Plus. Okay. And what do you have that's next? What's the next thing you're working on?
And I've got a few things that I'm not ready to talk about, but hopefully one of them kicks up.
You've seen the finished version, I assume.
Oh yeah. I was involved every bit of it.
Okay, good. Well, I'm excited, and I know that everybody that listens to the Cathouse Hollywood podcast is definitely going to watch it, and maybe we'll do a live chat talking about it the day after. But well, thank you very much. Again, Nothing But a Good Time will be out September 17th on Paramount Plus. The Cathouse Hollywood podcast returns with my explanation of why I hate hair metal, or the term, right after I tell you about Cathouse Coffee. Are you familiar with Cathouse Coffee? I personally truly think it's the greatest coffee you will ever drink. Yeah, do I own the company? Yeah, I do own the company. But for 2 years, we've been putting out really, really good coffee. Specialty coffee is a term that not every company can be called. Starbucks isn't a specialty coffee company, but Cathouse Coffee absolutely is. We have our dark roast out right now, but very soon we're going to be coming out with pumpkin. Now, I know you hate pumpkin spice. I hate pumpkin spice. But this is pumpkin. It's coming out soon. Look, I think you need to just try Cathouse Coffee. Just get yourself a bag right now, and you'll agree that it's the best damn coffee ever. Go to cathousecoffee.com. What? Cathousecoffee.com. Are you getting the idea that maybe today I've had too much Cathouse Coffee? No! Because there isn't such thing as too much Cathouse Coffee. Okay, maybe there is, and maybe I'm on that threshold, but Cathouse Coffee, it tastes great, and it's gonna keep you up. In 1985, there was a really cool scene in Hollywood. Bands like Guns N' Roses, Faster Pussycat, Jet Boy, Junkyard. Selfishly, I call those bands Cathouse bands because they all played the Cathouse and hung out at the Cathouse regularly. The Sunset Strip had Warrant, Poison, Tough. Very different from our scene, but still fun rock and roll. And the bands like Poison and Warrant and all those bands, they still came and hung out at the Cathouse, and sometimes they would play the Cathouse. The bands like Poison and Warrant took their inspiration from the glam scene, but probably more from bands like Rat and Motley Crue. And from what it seemed to me, is the Cathouse bands also took a lot of inspiration from the glam scene, but it was a little more dirty and a little dangerous. A little more from the New York Dolls. I remember even Faster Pussycat describing themselves as glam meets punk. While to some in the hardcore thrash world, glam was a bad word, but it described the type of music that we were listening to. And I'm talking about glam bands like Swede, David Bowie, T-Rex, Slade, Alice Cooper, Twisted Sister, and a band that really influenced a lot of us during the days. Not only the sound, but the look was Aerosmith. Yes, back in the day, Aerosmith was glam. There was also the king of glam rock. His name was Gary Glitter, but we don't talk about him because he's a fucking pedo. Anyway, Guns N' Roses, back in the day, they would even say that there was glam influences. I mean, check out Hanoi Rocks. That's a perfect example. Formed in Finland in 1979, they put the glam in glamours. How Michael Monroe was almost a pretty chick, sort of. They were glam, but in a junkie sort of way. I always like to call our scene gypsy junkie. In any case, Hanoi Rocks was great, and Michael Monroe still plays, and he still got it. The songs of Hanoi Rocks brings me back to those Cathouse days because that's what we all listened to, and we would get import Hanoi Rocks t-shirts. That was kind of our glam. more dirty, more dangerous. You would call the Sunset Strip bands in the early days also glam. And come on, look at Motley Crue Theater of Pain. That is totally glam. And yes, some of Guns N' Roses' early pictures have a little glam in them. Hell, I have no problem if someone said that the band I was in, Virgin, was glam, even though we sounded more punky and I'm ugly as hell with guy liner on. But the bands back then, we were a very cool community and we all worked our asses off. A couple decades later, this genre that we all played and lived in was labeled as hair metal. When you hear the word hair metal, to me, it sounds like a genre that's defined by hair. And yes, hair played a big part of it, but I think judging some of these bands just by their hair lessens the quality of some great bands. Not one single band from the late 80s. I'm talking Guns N' Roses, Poison, Skid Row, Cinderella. Nobody described the music as hair metal. If you were in the scene, never back in the day did you say hair metal. I'm guessing it was a term made up by some journalist or DJ that had nothing to do with the scene. Were there bands back then that were probably signed just because they had the big hair and the makeup? Yeah, I'm sure there was. I don't need to name who those bands are, but they were probably shitty and just had the look that the record label wanted. I also believe that there were really good bands that were never taken seriously because of the costumes. And my perfect example, and I use this all the time, is the band Cinderella. This was a great bluesy rock band. I believe if they were a little more stripped down in the appearance, that they still would be a huge band, because Cinderella, go back to any of their old songs, they've got great songs, a great catalog, so much talent. Now, if you said thrash music, you would probably think Megadeth, Slayer, Exodus, Death Angel. You think of fans thrashing all around in the pit. I mean, even Metallica has that song, Thrashing All Around. Bands and fans of that genre are proud to be called thrash bands. Black metal. That term conjures up ideas of evil sounds and Satanism. And bands like Venom or Merciful Fate didn't mind being called black metal. I mean, Venom had a song called Black Metal. Hair metal, though, to me, it sounds like an insult. I've also heard it called butt rock, but I think that was reserved more for bands like Nickelback and Creed. That's what I would call butt rock. I'm guessing those bands don't like being called butt rock, just as some of these 80s bands you would think wouldn't like being called hair metal, but now it's been used and some bands have accepted the moniker. However, I'm just guessing Motley Crue or Faster Pussycat or Skid Row have never called themselves hair metal. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm guessing if you were there in that time, you wouldn't say hair metal, but for the outsiders that want to package it into a nostalgic box, they would call it hair metal. And right now, so many people are used to it that you think of these bands and you call them hair metal bands. Look, call it what you want. If there's a band from those genres that I think really didn't offer much as far as material, and there's bands that I personally do not like, and I think their hair was their best quality, I might say hair metal them, but I wouldn't say it in a nice way. So what do we call it? Well, like Lemmy used to say, we play rock and roll. And it doesn't matter if I'm listening to Lamb of God or Rat. To me, it is rock and roll. Sometimes I say metal, but that opens up another debate. What is metal? Is warrant metal? Is winger metal? To some it is. I think metal has so many different genres, but I don't like the word hair metal. That's just me. You know, back at the Cathouse, which band do you think all of those bands that were starting out were listening to? I mean, we were listening to a lot of, T-Rex and a lot of Sex Pistols and Hanoi Rocks and Ramones and Aerosmith and Sweet and Slate, like the bands I mentioned. But there was one band that is described in Wikipedia as an American glam, metal, and hard rock. If I was in that band and they said glam metal and hard rock, I would take it. And you're not going to believe who I'm talking about. There is one band that everybody was talking about. And it didn't matter if it was the Sunset Strip Rock bands or even the dirty gypsy junkies of the Cathouse. We all loved Kix. When that album, Midnight Dynamite, came out, oh my God, everybody was listening to Kix. I remember seeing Steven Adler wearing a Kix shirt. My band Virgin even got to open up for Kix. Would I call them hair metal? Never. But they're playing all the hair metal festivals, and most people would have called them hair metal. So now we have Nothin But a Good Time, the uncensored story of hair metal. Will I watch it? Absolutely. What I'd like to do is maybe come back to the Cathouse Hollywood podcast and review it. Maybe what I'll do is on the Patreon, I'll have a live chat and we can all discuss the show, and then I'll air it as a podcast because I know we're all going to have opinions on it. I don't want to sound like I'm down on the show. I am not. I like Jeff Tremaine. I think he's very talented. I really like the book. And I'm hoping that Nothin But a Good Time is going to be really, really good. But there's a lot of darkness in that scene. And I'm just hoping someone would come out with the true tales of our 80s scene, the good and the tragic. Talk about what it was really like. Talk about the hustling. Was there a lot of sex and drugs and rock and roll? Absolutely there was. But I'd like to hear the stories of those people digging down at what it was really like. I haven't seen a book like that. Maybe I'm the person to write it. I don't know. Hey, the Cathouse Hollywood podcast is back, and I'm happy that you're here. Remember, my Patreon is launching. Obviously, I don't do much time editing these podcasts either. The Cathouse, my Patreon is going to be back September 23rd. It's patreon.com/Riki Rachtman. Even if you join for $2.22 a month, you're going to get every Cathouse Hollywood podcast, including the archived ones. You know, there were a lot of podcasts that were taken down, and that's because I took them down because I told a lot of those stories in my show, One Foot in the Gutter. But I'm going to put all those Cathouse Hollywood podcasts back, and I'm going to be recording a lot more. If you like the Cathouse Hollywood podcast, be sure to subscribe. I think you can subscribe on Spotify or Apple. But definitely give us a good review and tell all of your friends. And I'll continue to make more. How did I forget to tell you? Another way you can support this podcast is by buying Cathouse shirts, Headbangers Ball shirts, OFITG. We've got so much cool stuff at cathousehollywood.com. That's cathousehollywood.com. You should go there as soon as this is done. Go to cathousehollywood.com and buy stuff. It's funny. I say like, hey, this show doesn't have any sponsors. Yeah, it does. I'm sponsoring all of them. I hope you had a good time. I did. I'm Riki Rachtman. Remember to keep one foot in the gutter, one fist in the gold. Look at that. I ended it just as the song ended.